All right. We are live. We are live, y'all. We are live. Just give me a second, y'all. We are live. What's up, Mikkel? We're going to talk about this motion denied in the case of People versus Daystar Williams. I decided to get on here late because I know I needed to do a part 2. The hearing was 2 days, and today was the final day of the hearing. And to no surprise, the judge denied the motion for Tory Lanez. And I'm going to explain to you briefly what happened in court, and then take a couple of questions. All right. All right. So the hearing was supposed to continue this morning at 10:30, and they started a little late. Started at about 11:20. Tory Lanez attorneys came late for some reason, and so we didn't get an early start. But the judge was not playing around. He went straight to it. He was ready to rule on the motion, and he was ready to explain why he wanted to rule on the motion. And Jose Baez was saying that he needed more time. He didn't like the way he was cut off on Monday. He wants to be able to bring in some witnesses to testify. He wants to be able to address certain issues before the judge was going to rule on his motion. And the judge said, I don't need to hear all of that. He said, I read your motion, I read the declarations, and I've heard your arguments. What else more do I need? And Jose Baez was like, if you let me put on my witnesses, if you let me let them testify, I've called them here. So he basically said, Jose Baez said, we're objecting to the court's ruling. We're objecting to the ruling. He said that we need to do some research. He wanted the decision to be stayed until we do some more research. We don't want to forfeit any rights to our client. And unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on your position, the judge said, no, none of that is necessary. None of your rights are waived. You still maintain all your rights. And he was ready to rule. He did allow the attorney to make a brief argument about a DNA expert. And then after that, he said, all right, I'm ready to rule. And he went through all the issues one by one. The first issue was the Instagram comment that came from Tory Lanez's account. He said it was not a discovery violation. It came from his own account. He should have been aware of that comment. Actually, if you watch the video that I did a video on the 84-page motion. I outlined 13 or 14 errors that they were alleging. I went through all the errors, and I basically said none of these errors are going to have any chance of a retrial. But I did say that one error regarding this Instagram comment may have some validity because the detective testified about the Instagram comment and he relied on hearsay. And if he was an expert on social media, that argument would have been valid. But the judge actually said that it's not even a hearsay. It's not even a violation of the Sanchez ruling, basically, from 2016. So it's not even a hearsay or a Sanchez violation because Detective Everhart was not an expert. He was just there to lay the foundation to the Instagram comment. So if you go back to my video on the 13 errors, the 13, I can't remember if it's 13 or 14, I will have to take that error away. So it only leaves me with, I believe there's only one error possibly made because I assumed that Detective Everhart, I thought he was there as an expert. So the judge said, no, he wasn't an expert. He was there to lay the foundation. So issue 1, Instagram comment, that's denied. Issue 2 was the statement that Megan made about seeing Tory Lanez video of him chopping up a horse. And they didn't play the video in court. The jury was given specific instructions about how to treat that. So therefore, the introduction or allowing Megan to testify about that is not a violation. It's not an error. That was issue 2. Then they skipped to issue 4, which is the DNA. The DNA is something that a lot of people, especially Tory Lanez fans, people in his camp, felt that was flawed. They listened to a comment or a phone call that Tory Lanez made from jail, and unfortunately, they really don't have any argument about the DNA. They claim there was manipulation. They claim that they received DNA notes late. There was a new DNA expert named Richard Eichenboom. He submitted a declaration that the judge read. And then also remember, Tory Lanez called his own DNA expert to the case. His own DNA expert arrived. His name was Mark Scott Taylor. There was no evidence that Mark Scott Taylor was not prepared, that he didn't get the discovery on time. There was no request to retest any DNA. And because his own expert agreed with the state's expert, Randy Cepeda, there's no issue. And in trial, the DNA evidence was determined to be inconclusive. So what's the argument? What is the debate? There is none really when you think about it. And not surprisingly, the judge denied the motion based on the issue of DNA. Then Tory had presented this argument. If you read the 84-page motion, and if you watch the video I did on the motion, which is there's a link in that to that video in the description, Tory argued that because prosecutor Kathy Ta said that she was going to impeach Tory Lanez by using rap videos, rap lyrics, things from his discography, that according to Tory, that made him not want to testify because of the threat of using his artistic expression against him. That created him not wanting to testify. Therefore, his right to testify was violated. But that argument, and again, I go through this. I go through all these arguments one by one. I went through these arguments when the motion came out. Not surprisingly, the judge denied it because, one, the new artistic expression law. First of all, the artistic expression law passed in 2023. Tory Lanez was convicted in December of 2022. There's an issue of whether or not the the new artistic expression law is retroactive. But the judge said, let's assume it is retroactive. Let's assume it is retroactive. But that's the first hurdle you got to get over, is figuring out if it's retroactive or not. And because it's so new, that hasn't been determined yet. But also, the law does not prohibit the prosecution from using your rap lyrics. What this law does, it allows defense attorneys and the defendant to have a hearing outside the presence of the jury, hopefully before the trial. You have a hearing before the trial to determine what will be admissible and what will not be admissible. Because if the prosecution can say, this rap song or these rap lyrics are extremely relevant to this case, it's admissible. I'll give you a good example. The guy that rapped about stealing EDD money, he did a video. He talked about EDD. He talked about stealing the EDD. He talked about how he got all this EDD money. And then eventually he was charged by the feds for fraud. In September of 2022. And that interview was about an hour plus long. I actually published that interview after the trial was over. There should be a link in the description to that entire audio if you haven't heard it. But Tory argued that that audio should have never came in. And actually, the plan was never for that audio to come in. They had already ruled during a pretrial hearing that the audio would not come in and that they would just bring Kelsey in to testify. But because Kelsey did not answer any questions on the stand, and after her cross-examination by George McDesian, they suggested that that statement, her interview with the prosecutors, may have been coerced or was done under pressure or was done against her will. So after George McDesian crossed her, he left the image in front of the jury that perhaps when Kelsey did make that statement, she did it under duress. But some of the reasons that Tory argued against this audio coming in is because, one, there's multiple hearsay, which is true. There is multiple hearsay on the audio, and that's pretty much the main reason. Because it was multiple hearsays, the audio should not have been played in front of the jury. But here's a very simple issue that Tory has to overcome, is that George McDesian, his defense attorney at the time, did not object to that audio coming in. So that's another thing that a lot of people aren't talking about. Some of these issues that are in the 84-page motion, they're not valid unless there was an objection to it during the trial. So we don't know if George McDesian just forgot to object, or maybe he was thinking, he deliberately said, let me let it play. Maybe it plays into a strategy. For whatever reason, he didn't object. And he had plenty of opportunity to go over that transcript. He had plenty of opportunity, as the judge said. He could have redacted certain parts of the audio. He could have said, we don't want the jury to hear this. The judge would have redacted whatever he didn't want the jury to hear, but McDesian didn't do that. Therefore, it played, and therefore, it's not an error. But the judge did agree that there are some portions of that audio that shouldn't have been played in court, but for whatever reason, that's the defense attorney's job. So denied on that issue of Kelsey Harris's out of court statement. And then he took up the issue of having his original attorney not able to represent him. That was combined into issue 3 and issue 7. We're talking about Sean Hawley. There were some allegations made that perhaps Sean Hawley helped Tory bribe Kelsey. At some point, Sean Hawley withdrew from the trial. We learned in this motion, we didn't know this before, but we learned, according to Jose Baez, apparently Sean Hawley was still on the case advising George McDesian. But when the allegations of bribery came up, she stopped advising George McDesian. And Jose Baez is arguing, Tory Lanez is arguing that all of these issues between Sean Hawley and George McDesian coming on late impacted his representation. He didn't have opportunity to be fairly represented by an attorney. Apparently, Sean Hawley was on this case from the beginning, 2 years. They argued that she withdrew because of the allegations, but then the judge went through some other things and said, look, Sean Hawley was actually on another case in Washington, D.C. So perhaps she wasn't available. She could have asked for a continuance. George McDesian, if he needed more time, he could have asked for a continuance, which he did not. Holly was doing a case that was going to tie her up till December 16th. Sean Hawley, that is. And the judge said no one asked for a continuance. McDesian never requested more time. And then he also said this idea of bribery that Jose Baez kept bringing up. Jose Baez actually said this term bribery is, he said when he goes through the transcript, I think he said he counted the word bribery 80 times. 80 times. So the judge said that word bribery actually comes up more times when they're discussing Tory Lanez in the SUV offering $1 million to Kelsey Harris and Megan Thee Stallion. It doesn't come up that much regarding Sean Hawley. So the judge basically systematically and methodically went through issues 3 and 7 combined and said that he was denying it. And that was pretty much the end of the judge's explanation to why he was denying the motion. And then I thought it was interesting that the judge actually said, look, you raised 7 main issues, but your motion ignores all this other evidence that the jury heard. Megan Peake's testimony, Sean Kelly's testimony, the apology telephone call, the apology text, the gun. When the police recovered the gun, it was right in the area where Tory Lanez was sitting. He says, you ignored all this other evidence. And he said, even if all 7 of these issues are granted, I would still deny the motion because it wouldn't change or wouldn't alter the jury's verdict. So then that went to the noon time. Right after the judge said that, it was noon, and the judge said, we're going to come back after lunch, and then we're going to set sentencing date. And then when they came back from lunch, Jose Baez spent 30 minutes explaining his objection to judge denying the motion. They came back at 1:35 and he spoke till 2:05. And he says, I want to address the denial. I don't want to appear that I'm relitigating the entire case, but we were not able to call witnesses that we would have called. The conflicted attorney, which is Sean Hawley, had we had an opportunity, we would have called George McDesian. They would have called Sean Hawley. McDesian would have came in and said he only had 2 weeks to prepare. and he would have testified that every day the prosecutors were bringing up new evidence, and he had a difficult time researching and addressing the issues. Um, he said that because of the conflicted counsel, Sean Hawley wasn't able to retain a better DNA expert. Hawley did not file any serious motions in the 2 years that she was representing Tory Lanez. We would have been able to show prejudice, Jose Baez was saying. And because McDesnian was only on this case for 2 weeks, it didn't, a case that warranted more preparation. He said that he subpoenaed the state's DNA expert, Randy Cepeda. Apparently, Randy Cepeda was in the courtroom on day one, Monday. He said we were going to question him about the shortcomings of the DNA lab, some of which he had relied on. He said that the DNA was completely false, and we were going to argue that it excludes Daystar Peterson as a contributor. What else did he say? He said that we were denied our ability to present our arguments in a different order than we wrote in the motion. We already had it organized to present it in the most persuasive way. It takes weeks, multiple attorneys. We had a flow of arguments, hours to prepare, but we were precluded, we were shackled from defending our client properly. The flow of the arguments, if we would have been able to do it the way we wanted to, would have highlighted the prejudice. It would have showed a lack of due process, and we would have been able to give the court all the information that she needs to make a just decision. He said, prior to being here in this hearing, I've always had the opportunity to have pre-discussion off the record with the judges. We were told to file motions, and that we fully expected to call witnesses, and we were not afforded that. And then he repeated that taking the motion that we submitted out of order, we were unable to complete our arguments. It led to, which we believe led to our motion being denied, and we were not able to put on our motion. He said we also have additional voicemail messages from attorney Sean Hawley to Tory that we will submit in a future supplement. The court said actually we didn't retest the DNA. The reason why we couldn't retest the DNA because the DNA was actually consumed, so there's no way to retest the DNA. So Jose Baez spent 30 minutes going through all the issues that he felt prevented him from presenting the motion the way he wanted to present the motion. And then after that, the judge said, okay. Actually, the prosecutor responded to Jose Baez's 30-minute response, and he actually brought up some good points, saying that Tory Lanez chose to go to his Instagram post and make claims that they tested the DNA or his DNA is not on the gun, making statements that were disingenuous to his millions of followers, and that Jose Baez was completely aware of this, and that this was a misrepresentation of the evidence. And then after the judge heard both sides, he said, all right, let's get to sentencing. I heard everything. I denied the motion. Let's get to the sentencing. And they agreed on a sentencing date of June 13th. June 13th. and he will be sentenced for the 3 felony counts: assault with the firearm, the discharging of the weapon with reckless discharging of a weapon, and then the possession of a firearm in the car. And then there were 2 gun enhancements on top of those 3 felonies. So he's looking at, well, I'll go through the sentencing because I'm sure somebody will ask me. I'll go through the years that he's looking at and what he will most likely receive. But I also want to add that nothing in this motion for retrial, for new trial, was surprising. You can go back and watch the video I did about what we're going to expect to see in this motion. I go through every single point one by one, and I pretty much knew that they were all going to get denied because there were no errors. Unfortunately, for those who weren't in the trial and who are big fans of Tory, there were no major errors. Let's say that there were no major errors that would have made the jury come to a different conclusion. And we learned about this was actually funny. And then I'll ask some questions. Jose Baez said that we have our expert, DNA expert. His name is Eichlin Boom. And prosecutor Bott said that Randy Cepeda, the state's DNA expert, was ready to testify and to challenge Eichlin Boom's declaration that was submitted to the court. I'm going to try to get the declarations in the next few days. I would love to read the 3 declarations that were submitted, but the declaration that was submitted, the prosecution got a chance to read it, and he told the judge that Cepeda is ready to challenge that declaration, and he's going to challenge it on that he relied. That's Eichlin Boom. He relied on antiquated methods, and that he was also disqualified in a case in Denver. So I guess they were going to smut him up a little bit and throw him under the bus. But the judge did not allow any of the witnesses to testify. And also the judge has every right not to allow witnesses to testify. It's his discretion. If he has declarations from the witnesses, it is up to the attorney. It is up to the attorney to argue those points without the witnesses. The judge doesn't have to sit there and listen to the witnesses. This is the longest, by the way, I would say the longest motion for retrial that I have ever sat in, ever witnessed. I would say that it was 2 days. It was 2 full days, pretty much. Motions for retrial are usually not this long, but I guess if you spend a lot of money and you hire the most high-profile attorneys available, you're going to get your money's worth. And I got to say that Jose Baez actually tried everything he could. He actually went beyond the boundaries of what you should do in a motion for new trial. So Tory Lanez definitely got his money's worth with Jose Baez. If you're ever in a jam in the state of Florida, he's definitely a lawyer that you want on your side. And on that note, I will answer a few questions and see if anybody wants to tap in. Let me throw the link. And I'll talk a little bit about the sentencing if anybody's interested in that. James Hudson says, great job at Tory Lanez trial. Saw you doing your thing. I appreciate you, James. Okay, this person says they're railroading him. Jaye. Tobias says, how much time do you think he will get? I'll get to that in a minute. How much time do you think he will get? This guy says Tory's going to get extorted. I'm assuming that when he gets to that prison, when he gets to that California prison yard. Hey, this is actually an interesting point by LM. I think Tory new attorney played him just to get his money because the new defense attorney really didn't give a great argument for new trial. Hey, I have to disagree with LM. I think Jose Baez, he pulled out every trick that you can pull out. He did everything you can do. I mean, he wrote damn near a 100-page motion. He tried to find errors in the trial where there were no errors. He actually did find, the judge did agree with him that the audio of Kelsey Harris probably shouldn't have come in, but George McDesian did not object to it. But other than that, he didn't have any good arguments that would overturn the trial. The arguments were good, but not good enough to give a new trial. This guy, Eric Jones, asked, how can they weaponize your lyrics and apply them to a situation that has nothing to do with it and say this is why he's guilty? You never heard of a rock band or a country singer go through this. Well, let me give you an example. Let's say you're charged with flocking houses. Let's say they charge you with 3 houses that you flocked. And they actually pull up a song where you're bragging and boasting about flocking houses. That song would be completely admissible. The lyrics of that song would be completely admissible. And that would be used along with the other evidence to try to convict you. So, yeah, rappers more often than country singers and rock bands write about stuff like that. But every artist is subject to their lyrics being used against them. Give me an example, Eric Jones, of an artist that's a country singer or a rock band artist that was charged with a crime and they didn't use his lyrics against him when they should have. Fat Blue Laces says it seems like Tory's lawyers definitely failed him as far as raising the right motions to go after. I could be wrong, but it just seems that way. I mean, first of all, when you have all this evidence against you, there's only so much you can do as a defense attorney. There are some things that they could have done differently in hindsight, but like, I would have never called Sean Kelly. I can tell you that right now. Would have never called Sean Kelly. That was a defense witness too, by the way. Sean Kelly was a defense witness. The prosecution was never, well, I can't say they was never going to call him, but Sean Kelly was not on the list for witnesses for the prosecution. I think they saw that the defense had him on the list, and they was like, oh, okay, we'll let the defense call him. So I would have never called Sean Kelly. Without Sean Kelly, you only have 2 people putting the gun in Tory's hand. When Sean Kelly testifies, now you got 3 people. You got 3 eyewitnesses. 3 eyewitnesses is difficult to overcome. I think you could have shown some reasonable doubt without Sean Kelly. But see, this is hindsight. I'm sure George McDesian is saying, damn, I shouldn't have called him. But you live and you learn. Oh, when is part 2? I'm going to try to drop this as soon as possible. I'm going to drop like parts 2, 3, and 4, like all at once, Richard. I got tied up. Well, I'm sorry to inform you, Belizean gang. The court has already established she was shot. Tory Lanez, in his own motion, is admitting she was shot. The defense, previous defense attorneys, the current defense attorneys are not contesting she was shot. No one that matters, I should say, don't believe she wasn't shot. And I wish people would just kind of stick to the facts of this case. She was clearly shot. Okay, Alex, you said that last night Tory wasn't going to get no more than 5 years. Why did the prosecutor say at least 9 years? That's harsh. Well, the prosecutor said, let me explain to you why the prosecutor said 9 years. What the prosecutor did, he took the minimum sentence on the 3 felonies, and he took the minimum amount on the gun enhancement. So let's go through that right now. Let's go through the minimum sentence. Count 1, the minimum sentence is 16 months, but the max is 4. So if you got a paper and pencil, let's add this up. The minimum sentence on count 1, 16 months. The minimum sentence on count 2, 16 months. The minimum sentence on count 3, 6 months. And then the 2 gun enhancements, you can get either 3 years, 4 years, or 10 years for the gun. Lost the signal there for a second. So I'm giving you the minimum sentence. I'm addressing this question by LM. So count 1, 16 months. Count 2, 16 months. Count 3, 6 months. Gun enhancement 1, 3 years. Gun enhancement 2, 3 years. Add that up. Add all of those minimum sentences up and tell me what you get. And then we'll come back to that, because that doesn't mean 9-year sentence is the minimum. So the judge can run some of these sentences concurrent, and that means that he'll have a lesser sentence. So let's say, for example, the 2 gun enhancements, he's not going to stack both those gun enhancements. He's going to run one of those gun enhancements consecutive with the other one. So he's not going to get an additional 6 years on whatever he gets for the 3 felonies. He's most likely going to get 3 years for the gun enhancement. So we'll say that's a fact. He's going to get at least 3 years for the gun enhancement, and he's probably not going to get 6. And then you got to figure out, well, how's the judge going to sentence these other ones? Because the minimum is 16 months, but the max is 4. Count 2, the minimum 16, but the max is 3. The minimum 6, but the max is 3 years. So there's a variety of different ways that the judge can sentence him just on those 3 counts. So let's say he gives him 16 months on the first count. And then the second count is 16 months, and the third count is 6 months. Let's say he runs that all concurrent. That's a 16-month sentence for all three of them. And then you add the 3 years for the gun enhancement. I would say a minimum sentence would be 4 years, 4 months. So a possible sentence is actually 4 years, 4 months if he runs the 3 felonies concurrent and he runs the 2 gun enhancements concurrent. All right, so we'll come back to that if there's any more questions on the sentencing, and I'll go through that math again. Okay. Okay, back to LM left another one. Do you really think Tory will spend a minimum 9 years in prison? No, I don't. I don't believe he will spend a minimum 9 years in prison. I do not believe he's going to get a 9-year sentence. Now that might be what the prosecutor. The prosecutor might ask him that, and I just posted a video of the prosecutor talking about that. So that might be an indication of what he's going to ask for. He's going to submit a memorandum in a couple of weeks. I'll give you guys the date on that. I'll try to get a copy of that memorandum when it gets submitted. Um, he the, he's going to file a sentencing memorandum on May 24th. On May 24th, and in that memorandum is what he's going to ask the judge to sentence Tory Lanez to, and he probably will ask for 9 years, somewhere 9, 10, 11 years. We'll see. That's a hefty sentence for this offense. If I was a judge, I think I would run the 3 felonies concurrent. That's 16 months on the minimum. I give him the minimum on those 3 felonies. That's 16 months. And then I give him the minimum on the gun enhancement. That's 3 years. 16 months and 3 years. That's 4 years, 4 months. That's my sentence for Tory Lanez. 4 years, 4 months. Also, you get you're doing 85% in the state of California. I believe it's 85%. So let me ask a couple more questions here. Wait, give me 1 second. All right, I'm back. Okay. Mikel Trujillo asks, what is your honest opinion here on both sides? Honest opinion on what? I'm not sure what you're asking. Both sides. I'm not sure. The hearing or the trial? Not exactly sure. Let's talk about the sentencing report. It's going to wild when the judge speaks. I think he's fed up. Okay, let me find the all the possible years that he can. All right, here we go. I posted this at streetgangs.com on an article called The 8 Reasons Why Tory Lanez is Asking for a New Trial. And in that article, I actually put down the years that he's facing for each offense. Let me put that here real quick. Talk about the sentencing briefly. Okay. Okay, so let's We can do the math on this real quickly, and it'll make sense to you why the prosecutor said 9 years. So the illegal possession of a concealed firearm in a vehicle carries a sentence of 16 months. That's the minimum. 2 years or a maximum of 3. The discharging of a firearm with gross negligence carries the same sentence, 16, 2, and 3. But the third count, which was added later, right? Oh no. Yeah, no, the second one here in the sentence was added later. But the assault with a firearm causing great bodily injury, that carries 6 months. There's actually 4 possible sentences on here. 6 months, 2 years, 3 years, or 4 years. The first two offenses that I just mentioned, you can serve your time in the county jail on those, because the max is 3 years on those. You could actually serve that in the LA County Jail. But the assault with a firearm causing great bodily injury, that must be served in the California Department of Corrections. So there's the possible sentences. And remember, the judge can run all of these concurrent. He can also say, look, I'm going to give you 2 years for the gun, and I'm going to have that run concurrent with the gross negligence charge, the firearm, discharging of the firearm. I'm going to give you 2 years for both of those to run concurrent. And then he could say the great bodily injury, I'm going to give you 2 years for that. He could add the 2. He can make that 2 plus 2. He could say, I'm going to give you 2. And then 4, I'll give you a total of 4 years for those 3 offenses. He could run the first 2 concurrent with the 2 years and then add 2 years for the great bodily injury. That's 4 years. He can max it out. He can say 4 years for great bodily injury. Great bodily injury, 4 years is the max. And we're going to run it all concurrent with the other 2. So just 4 years for all 3 of those offenses. But then he could throw on the gun enhancement. He could add the 3 years for the gun enhancement. That's 7. So I'm gonna tell you, I think the minimum sentence that the judge will give him is 4 years, 4 months, and the maximum sentence he'll give him is 7 years. 4 years for all the three felonies, and then an additional 3 years for the gun enhancement. So I can see the judge giving him 7 years, but I can see the judge trying to be nice and give him 4 years, 4 months. So that's how that goes. And if you want some information on that, you could. This article is. I'll put the link to the article right here in the chat. Here's a link to that article there. Okay. You should have been Tory's lawyer. I don't think I would have. I don't think I would have fared any better. I definitely would not have called Sean Kelly, and I would definitely not have let that audio play in court. The reason why the audio played in court is because George McDesium was questioning Kelsey on the stand about pressure that the prosecutors were giving her. There was no pressure, but he wanted to make it seem like the prosecutors were a little shady, and he did that in front of the jury. And then the prosecutors were like, you know what, we're going to play the audio. So those are the 2 things I would have did differently. The audio would have never played, and Sean Kelly would have never testified. But everything else, I think I would have done exactly the same. I would have done exactly the same. I don't know if that would have made a big difference, but it actually would have, because instead of 3 people putting the gun in Tory's hand, if I was a defense attorney, we would only had 2 people putting the gun in his hand. In fact, we would have only had 1 person putting the gun in Tory's hand, because the audio would have never came in. The audio would have never came in, and I would have never called Sean Kelly to testify. So really, you only have one person putting the gun in his hand. If you would have defended it that way, that could have possibly had a different outcome for Tory Lanez. But when you have three people putting the gun in your hand, it's a wrap. Yeah, there was a pause here. Cowboys asked me if I followed the Adnan Syed case in Baltimore. I actually listened to that podcast. Man, I don't know how many years ago that was when they did the whole season. I think it was a serial podcast. I think it was in I'm going to say 2017. They did a whole season on Adnan Syed. And I'm going to have to say that I didn't believe he was innocent. I believe I did believe he was still guilty. I heard he was able to get released, but he might end up getting taken back into custody on some DNA technicality. So I don't know. But yeah, I was it was a fascinating podcast that they did on Adnan Syed. Basically, it was a story about whether or not he killed his high school girlfriend, and they did a whole, I don't know, like 10 episodes on the serial podcast. Can Tory appeal to a higher court? Yes, he could appeal. And keep in mind, what we heard in court for the last 2 days was not an appeal. That was just a motion for new trial. So he hasn't even began the appeal process yet. But the appeal process will start as soon as he is sentenced. As soon as he is sentenced, they may even have started getting all of the documents together now. But the appeal process will start very shortly, probably after he's sentenced. If you're dumb enough to rap about crimes you're actually doing, then they can use it. Yeah. If you're dumb enough to rap about them, then they could use them. Yeah, just don't rap about stuff that you might be doing. That's all it is. Trust me, if Bob Marley ever shot a sheriff, if he literally ever shot a sheriff, they would have used his song against him. Why did he get? Oh, okay. Why did he get the extra 2 enhancements? He ain't a gang member. They're gun enhancements. They're not gang enhancements. The reason why he got 2 gun enhancements is because of the 2 charges. Let me see. I'll tell you which ones. I'll tell you which ones got the enhancement right now. The 2 charges that got the enhancement are right here. Not the possession. The possession doesn't carry an enhancement. It is the discharging of the firearm. You get a gun enhancement for that one. And then, of course, which is right here, discharging of a firearm, that's 246.3 of the California Penal Code. And then the assault with a firearm causing great bodily injury. That one also, the enhancement was found true on those. So that's why he got 2 gun enhancements. So I apologize for coming on so late, but hey, when I come on early, I usually have a larger audience, but I wanted to just tap in anyways, since the hearing had just finished. They should not have let them play Tory's phone call. This is a good point. Now, I don't think you could have argued as a defense attorney. I don't think there's any basis not to prevent that from coming in. You just got to come up with a clever way to rebut it. But that's coming in. What I would say is Tory should have never made that phone call from jail. He should have never called Kelsey Collect from jail. So if he would have never made that phone call, if he would have never called Sean Kelly to the stand, and if his attorney wasn't so aggressive with Kelsey Harris on the stand, those three things right there could have changed the whole result of this trial. But most of these are his fault. He made the phone call. He hired the lawyer, George McDesian, and they obviously had a conversation about bringing Sean Kelly in. So those are mistakes that could have changed the outcome of this case. But that phone call is going to come in. That phone call is coming in. I don't think there was no argument to prevent it from coming in. Can Megan sue for a financial claim? She could actually sue. She can sue Tory in civil court for violating her civil rights when he shot her. I'm not sure she would do it. Usually you do that because it's a money grab. You sue someone for financial gain. Or you could end up doing what Cardi B did. Cardi B sued someone just to make a point. Just to make a point. But look, Tory Lanez going to go to prison for at least 4 years, 4 months. And I think that's punishment enough. Yaya asked, can he appeal it? Definitely. He could appeal. He would be appealing the conviction, not the denial. He won't be appealing his denial for retrial. He will be appealing the conviction that took place during the trial. That's what he'll appeal. Cliff, I've answered this question earlier. I'll answer it again. I think there's on the low end. I think that he could easily get a 4-year, 4-month sentence. We'll just say 4 years. He can get a 4-year sentence if the judge runs some of these sentences concurrently, or he can get a 7-year sentence if the judge decides to run maybe the gun enhancement consecutively. So he can get 4 years and for the assault that caused great bodily injury. The max on that's 4 years. The judge's got to give him the max on something, right? I don't think he's going to give him the minimum, but you got to also take into consideration. Here's another thing: the Jose Baez is going to file a sentencing memorandum too, to tell the judge, look, this man is an outstanding citizen in his community. He's got a 6-year-old kid. He has never been to jail before. He's never been convicted of a crime. He has never been to prison. This man is a multi-platinum selling artist. his many members of his family rely on him as the main source of income. I know Jose Baez is going to present an incredible argument that Tory Lanez should be sentenced to the minimum. And the minimum would be, I think the minimum, well, 16 months. 16 months is the minimum on the sentence, on the 3 felonies. 16 months. But then you got to deal with the enhancement. And I'm not sure if the judge has the discretion to ignore the enhancement sentence, or is he bound by law to give him at least the minimum? So if he gives him the minimum, that's 3 years. And you could run that 3 years concurrent with the 16 months. So I'm not sure if the minimum sentence that Jose Baez can argue for will be 16 months or 3 years. But whatever the minimum is, that's what Jose Baez is going to argue for. And I think that will be, he'll present a very compelling argument because Tory Lanez is not a habitual criminal, you know. Also, what I would do if I was Jose Baez, I would say that my client is also going to get treatment for alcohol. He's going to get treatment for domestic violence. You know, he's going to voluntarily do all these things so that the court knows that this man is truly, I would say, truly sincere and maybe regretful. But he's got to be careful how far Tory Lanez goes, because he still wants to appeal, right? He still wants to appeal. But he's definitely going to argue, Jose Baez, for the minimum sentence. 16 months is the minimum sentence on those 3 felonies. Now, deportation is a whole nother issue, because that is handled in the federal court. That's outside the jurisdiction of this criminal court, the state court. So that deportation is a whole nother issue that Tory Lanez is going to have to fight that battle in a whole nother court. And he's going to have to hire a whole different set of attorneys, some immigration attorneys or deportation attorneys to handle that. Do you think Tory should appeal or just do the time? Well, it depends on what sentence he gets. If Jose Baez argues effectively for a minimum sentence, and the judge gives him that minimum sentence, let's say 16 months, you might as well just sit in there and do those 16 months. It's going to take longer than that for the appeal anyway. So, but then he still might want to appeal it so that he doesn't have a conviction on his record. Now he's as of December, he's been a convicted felon. But today, the judge actually gave him some rules saying that you're no longer allowed to possess a weapon. If you do own weapons, you got to turn them in. You are now a felon. So he might still want to appeal to get some of his rights back. Do you think this will break him? If he gets a lower sentence, I don't think it'll break him. If he gets anything like 7 years or less, 7 years is actually still a long time too. So, and he's not a young person anymore. Oh well, he's 30, according to this Wikipedia. He's 30 years old. So it could break him in terms of his ability to continue his career. If he gets 7 years, he does 85%. He gets out when he's like 35 or 36. It might be hard for him to jump back out there and to continue his career. So it could break him, depending on what the sentence is. It all depends on how old he'll be when he gets out. But 30 years old, he's 30 right now. He's got about 6 months credit in the county jail, so that will go towards his sentence as well. James says once he's done with his sentence, he'll be deported like Shine. Well, he'll have a chance to argue. He'll have a chance to defend himself. I've seen some people actually fight in immigration court against the deportation and win. I've actually worked on a couple cases. I think I've won. I think I've won maybe 3 deportation cases. But you got to have a hell of an argument. Uh, if you have kids that are U.S. citizens, that helps. Also, if you're going to be deported to a country that has civil war or other dangers presented, that helps too. Unfortunately, Canada is probably one of the safest countries in the Western Hemisphere, so he can't say that it's a danger for him to go back to Canada. But he does have a 6-year-old kid. I believe that kid was born here. I don't know. Does anyone know where his child was born? If his child is a Canadian citizen, then he won't have that argument. You know, to get back, he needs to reunite with his kid, and hopefully his kid is a U.S. citizen. So this is basically kind of the same question. Do you think his career is over? Well, look, I know that Jose Baez is going to submit a sentencing memorandum that is going to argue for the minimum sentence because Tory doesn't have any history. Well, we can't say any history, but he doesn't have any convictions. He's never been to prison. But you know, the prosecution is going to argue, look, Your Honor, this man has a history of this, he's got a history of that, and it finally culminated on this night, highly intoxicated, gun present. So we'll see. We'll see whose argument wins out in the sentencing memorandums. That we'll learn more about that on June 13th. But I definitely support a minimum sentence for Tory Lanez on this. I'm not sure what the bare minimum would be because the one thing I don't know is does the judge have to impose a sentence on the gun enhancement? I'm not sure if he has to do that by law or if he has the discretion of not sentencing him because that's 3 years. The gun enhancement minimum is 3 years. So, and then the minimum on the 3 felonies is 16 months. So I'm not sure if the 3 years can run concurrent with the 6, and also actually the 3 years can run concurrent, but I wonder if the judge has a discretion of just saying, I'm not going to apply the gun enhancement. And that'll be an argument. I'm sure Jose Baez is going to do all the research on that and ask the judge the sentence accordingly if that's a possibility. But that gun enhancement, whew, the gun enhancement has the highest minimum for years. The highest minimum for years is 3. I'm sorry, the highest minimum, 3 years minimum for the gun enhancement. The minimum on the 3 felonies is 16 months, and 6 months. But the minimum on the gun enhancement is 3 years. So that gun enhancement, that is your enemy if you're in court fighting a case that has to do with a gun. The justice system hates ninjas with guns. Was there ever a plea deal set up? Unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, plea deals are done in private. So maybe there was a plea offer by the prosecution. If there was an offer, obviously it was too high because they went to trial. But we will never know anything about the plea, if there was even a plea offer, unless Tory Lanez talks about it. The lawyers will never talk about it because they're bound by attorney-client privilege. But if Tory wants to talk about pleas that he was offered when he was first charged, he's free to do that. But us as a general public, we have no idea. I'm sure his family, he probably shared that with his family. So there are rumors of a plea. Maybe there were. Maybe there was a plea offer. Don't know. Much better says, based on what I've read, he is a habitual criminal. Well, I can say this: he doesn't have any convictions. So I guess that both can be true. You could be a habitual criminal because you've committed assaults, you've done things, but they haven't went to court. He hasn't been convicted. He does have a gun arrest in Florida, but he was able to work that case off through diversion. So that doesn't count. It's not a conviction. I'm not sure if I understand this question that Cowboy is asking. Can a felon go through a process to get the charges Lane's got removed from his or her record? I'm not quite understanding the way you worded that question. Rappers spend like 100,000 plus on bills a month. I believe it. I believe it. I'm not a rapper, and I spend over 10,000 a month in bills. So I feel like the $10,000 a month I spend on bills is high, but I've I've been a frugal person my whole life. I'm sure rappers would. I'm sure if I said that in front of some rappers, they'd be like, "Man, I spend 150,000 a month on bills." So hypothetically speaking, if Tory was to have someone pregnant now and the child's born during his sentence, would the court would that court towards his deportation? Would that count towards his deportation case? Yeah, you definitely have a better argument if your family is rooted in the United States. I remember there was this Filipino girl that went to prison. She was born in the Philippines. She moved to the United States when she was 5 years old. So she really has no understanding or knowledge of the Philippines. She didn't even speak Tagalog. But she was deported back to the Philippines after she finished her sentence. She lost her deportation and she was sent to the Philippines. She was sent to a country she didn't have any family there, and she knew nothing about it. So, and this story can be told over and over and over again. so many times. Alex Sanchez, former MS gang member, he beat a deportation case, but he had lost one years prior. He was born in El Salvador, came to the United States when he was like 6 years old, and he got arrested for something, did his time, got deported to El Salvador, and he knew nothing about El Salvador, has very little memory of the country, but it's crazy that they can send you to a place that you know nothing about, and you just got to figure it out when you get there. So that deportation is real. Tory Lanez can get 16 to 18 months with overcrowding in California prisons. I'm sure that his defense team is going to argue for a minimum sentence, and 16 months is the minimum sentence on those 3 counts. So Donnie Z TV, does a gun enhancement and a gun possession have the same 3-year minimum? Let me pull up this article that I wrote here. Let me share this real quick because this might be able to explain it better. So the illegal possession or the concealing of a gun, that doesn't have the enhancement. The enhancement comes with this charge, the discharging of a firearm or gross negligence, 246.3, and it also comes with the assault with the firearm causing great bodily injury. So the gun enhancement minimum on both of those is 3 years. But trip this out, the maximum is 10. So the gun enhancement here carries the largest sentence than any of the other offenses that he committed. So isn't that interesting? The enhancement actually carries more prison time than the actual offenses he was found guilty of. Did that make sense? The enhancements, the gun enhancements actually carry more prison time than the actual charges that he was found guilty of. They are trying to remove the judge before sentencing. Your thoughts? Well, I haven't heard that. I haven't heard that. I don't listen or address much of the internet rumors. 90% of them turn out not being true. So um, I don't think until I hear that that's what they're actually doing, I don't think that's an issue. I'm not aware if Tory Lanez disobeyed the judge. I'm not aware of that. He was actually a very cooperative defendant during trial, showed up on time every single court date, was never late. He had a huge support base there, at least 10 people in court supporting Tory during the trial every time. So I can't say that I witnessed anything that he did inappropriately. He was a very cooperative defendant. I think I'm going to law school, says T.L. Garrett. You know, I was going to go to law school after I graduated from college. I took the LSAT, applied to law schools, but I ended up just going to grad school instead. most people who are lawyers don't like being lawyers. Just keep that in mind. Talk to a lot of lawyers that have been in the game for at least 10 years and get some, let them lace you before you decide to go to law school. Now, why would this be important, Cowboy? Why did any of the lawyers call, you mean Kylie Jenner? I think you mean Kylie Jenner. Why didn't they call Kylie Jenner to, I don't really find the value in that unless you just want to be entertained. You want to see some stuff on TMZ and you want to see a whole circus outside the courthouse. But nah, I didn't. I don't know the value of even bringing her. You already had EJ testify; he was there. You had Kelsey Harris testify; she was there. You had Megan testify; she was there. What else did you need? The prosecution didn't see any importance. I don't know if the defense wanted to. Plus, that would have just turned this trial into a circus. It was already a crazy day when Megan the Stallion walked into the courthouse. Okay, when Megan came in her all purple, that was a huge distraction right there. So imagine now you got Megan, and then you're gonna bring in Kylie Jenner. Nah. Do you feel the judge was biased during a new trial motion? Well, I can't say that I would say he was biased. I think he did what I was expecting him to do. And again, there's a link in the description. I did a video on what I would expect the judge to rule on all these separate issues. And basically, I didn't see that any of the issues had any merit. I read that 84-page motion word for word, and they didn't. The arguments did not reach the threshold of granting a new trial. So I would have came to the same conclusion. So I can't say I think the judge was biased. I think maybe he came off a little bit more impatient today, and I think the reason why is because Jose Baez was trying to insert all of these things in the into the into this hearing that was not appropriate for the hearing. He wanted to bring in witnesses. Judge doesn't have to listen to witnesses. He wanted to relitigate certain aspects of the trial. That's not what the hearing's for. So maybe the judge got a little bit impatient. Jose Baez took up so much time during the hearing. He was very repetitious. I mean, after the judge denied the motion, Jose Baez went on a 30-minute objection. He did a 30-minute objection. It lasted from 1:35 to 2:05. Usually your objections are like, you want to object for the record. I object, Your Honor, to your decision of denying our motion. I feel that our issues on due process and prejudice were clearly established, and based on this case and this case and that case, we feel that our client should have been granted a new trial. So I just want to go on the record that we are objecting to your decision, and we're going to file another supplement that outlines our objection more detailed. Boom, 5 minutes. Not even 5 minutes. How long did I just take? 2 minutes. Jose Baez did a 30-minute objection, and the judge sat there and let him do it. Didn't interrupt him once. So, no, I don't think the judge was biased in his decision. Oh man, Virgo life. I see your question there, but I'm not even going to go there. Virgo life. I'm not even going to go there. Enhancements sound so unconstitutional. I got to say, Dizzy Roth, I despise enhancements. And also, if you despise enhancements as I do, then you also have to despise hate crimes, because a hate crime is, in essence, an enhancement. So let's say I beat up this dude because he's Asian. So I get charged for the assault, but I get charged with an enhancement because I did it. It was a hate crime because he's Asian. So I feel like we need to just charge people for the crimes they committed. If I beat up an Asian guy because he was Asian, give me the 5 years for the assault. But now, because you guys proved I did it because he's Asian, you're going to send me to jail for 10 years. So hate crimes and enhancements are essentially the same thing. So keep that in mind. If you don't like enhancements, you also got to be against hate crimes. I mean, you don't have to, but it's not, you're not following the same path of logic. Because I used to think hate crimes are cool because, of course, I'm a racial minority. We shouldn't be having to be assaulted, hurt, shot, killed, hung, lynched because of our race. But now that I've gotten into my more wiser years, I object to hate crimes as well. uh, I'm not going to address that topic here. So, Mr. Achimpong, I heard they want to make an example out of him, so they're going to give him the 23 years. I think the max is actually 22 in some months. And come on, let's be real here. Is this crime worth 23 years, 22 years and some months? And I would say absolutely not. I don't know if you're going off of some blog that you heard, but I could say that none of the sentences have been discussed by either the defense or the prosecution. That has not been mentioned. There's no information out there. So you may have heard someone saying that at this point that's not true. I don't think that the judge will max him out like that. I don't think the judge is going to give him all day on this crime. Oh, was it reported that they're trying to remove the judge? I mean, I was in the court. I don't. Maybe I missed that. Did I miss that? Let's see. I mean, as soon as the hearing was over, he set the date for June 13th for sentencing, and they got deadlines on submitting their sentencing requests, and also something I didn't mention earlier. The judge asked the prosecutors if they're going to be seeking any restitution that Tory Lanez needs to pay. Prosecution said that they, at this time, they don't know. They will know by, when will they know by? They will know by May 16th if they will be seeking restitution during their sentencing. So maybe I missed that if they were trying to remove the lawyer. Who knows? Did they actually prove that it was his weapon? I don't recall that as far as the possession charged. Well, no, that wasn't what it was about. It wasn't about proving if it was his weapon or not. They um they didn't prove it. They weren't trying to prove it. Well, let me let Don Neat Z jump in here for a second.
Hey, Alex, what's up?
What's going on, man?
Man, what was up with that lady, man? Do you think she was too aggressive or combative when she was talking to the prosecutor?
Oh yeah, probably. But I ain't got nothing to say about her.
Oh, for how was
There was
Tory?
a lot of people that a lot of bloggers that came and they didn't really follow proper protocol. But
Right.
what else you got?
Is
What
that,
else?
is that is that a great tactic though? That's a bad tactic, right? To be aggressive like that.
I would say, I would agree.
Okay. And then
Yeah,
what did Tory look defeated, man, in court?
yeah, he definitely looked dejected, melancholy. Just yeah, I mean, as anyone else would. You're hoping that you get out.
Right,
So nah, he was nodding his head back and forth when the judge was denying the motion.
right.
So yeah, he was definitely disappointed.
Okay. Then what about the ruin part? Is that true? Did he say you is gonna ruin my life? Is that true? Is that a true statement?
Yeah, that was on the day one of the hearing before the deputies took him out. He stopped, turned around towards the judge, and said, "Please don't ruin my life. I could be, I could be your brother." He kind of tried to play the little racial thing because he's
Right.
black. The judge is black. He's black,
Right.
but he said, "Please don't ruin my life."
And
And
one last one. The
yeah,
Gascon statement. Do you think that was man? Do you think he could have came with a stronger statement in the beginning, just saying I'm not guilty instead of started saying race stuff? What you think that was a good tactic or what?
I always tell the defendants to not say anything. No, don't
Mm,
make any statements.
right.
Keep your mouth shut throughout the entire process. So I don't even. I'm surprised that Jose Baez, you know, allowed that and let him do that.
Right.
Yeah,
Yes, sir. Well, man, I appreciate you pulling me up, man. Yes, sir.
no
You know,
doubt.
I'm trying to blow up.
Okay, go tap. Tell everybody where they can find you at.
Man, please pull up on me on Don Easy TV right there. DonNeezeeTV. And it's the same on Instagram. Pull up on
So
your boy.
we got about 100 people in here. So all 100 of y'all go over there and tap in and follow his channel and subscribe to his thing.
Yeah, appreciate that.
All right, man.
Salute, brother.
All right, have a good one, man.
You too, bro. Later.
All right. Okay. I think I'm gonna wrap this up because it's late here in California. It's 2:49 Pacific Standard Time here in Los Angeles. At least I don't have to wake up early tomorrow. And trying to get some information on the Jonathan Majors case. Unfortunately, man, I haven't tapped in. I haven't been following. Um, don't really have anything on that. Sorry. Baez made things worse with his antics. um, I don't know if he made things worse. He definitely put everything on the record. Everything's on the record. He did not. He did not miss anything. Everything's on the record. He may have missed some things that he didn't include in his 84-page motion because he was arguing a few things that were not in the motion, and the judge was like, "Hey, you didn't put that in the motion, so you can't argue that now." But everything's on the record for Tory. This guy went above and beyond a normal motion for a retrial hearing. He spent 2 days in this courtroom doing this. So let's see here. Do you feel there's a distinction between whether he shot her and the charges? I'm not really sure. I don't understand the question. Shout out to Alex for hanging in and giving us the breakdown. I appreciate you, man. I should have tapped in a little earlier, but you know. All right, so let me just give you the date for the sentencing and all the other things. So the sentencing is going to be on June 13th. And that'll be 10:30 a.m. for anybody in the Los Angeles area that's interested in going to the sentencing. That should be a pretty interesting date. There's probably going to be a lot of people show up. So if you want to tap in, 10:30 a.m. on June 13th. By May 16th, the prosecution will make a decision on whether or not they're seeking restitution from Tory Lanez. And that's a financial punishment on top of the sentencing to state prison. Also, the sentencing memorandum by the prosecution will be submitted by May 24th. And I believe, no. May 23rd or May 24th. And the defense will have 1 week to respond to the prosecution's sentencing memorandum. So they're going to have all of this. All of this will be submitted before we are in court on June 13th. And that's all I have for you. Motion was denied. Tory Lanez will not be getting another trial. And he'll be sentenced on June 13th. And thanks for tapping in with Street TV.